a Netflix original film.
The Wi-Fi isn't working.
In the event of a global communications breakdown, do the following. Stay inside.
What just happened here is happening everywhere.
Avoid strangers.
We've all been deserted.
I don't trust them.
And most importantly, do not panic. Julia Roberts.
What happens next?
Mahershala Ali.
I knew something was coming.
Leave the World Behind. Rated R. In select theaters now and on Netflix December 8th.
Today on CityCast Portland, we're talking about the legislative hearings on Measure 110, Governor Kotek forgiving uncollected traffic fines, and the federal civil rights lawsuit filed against the city and Legacy Emanuel Hospital. Joining me today on this week's News Roundup are Willamette Week's Dive podcast host and Potlander column author Brianna Wheeler, and our very own executive producer, John Notarianni. It's Friday, December 8th. I'm Claudia Meza, and this is what Portland's talking about. Welcome, everyone, to the Friday News Roundup. Brianna, John, thanks for being here.
Hello, hello.
Worse.
If you're new to the show, today is the day we break down some of the biggest local stories of the week with some of the best and brightest journalists in town, like Brianna Wheeler here.
Pew, 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 pew. Hi.
And not on that list is me.
John, you're part of the show. She's the guest.
Some of the best and brightest journalists and John.
Did I name myself? Oh, my God. And John Notarianni. John, what's up, man?
What's up, Claudia? Glad to be here.
Also, before we jump into the news, I like to ask our guests an opening question just so I can personally tell the difference between John's voice and our guests. Are you guys ready for the opening question?
Yes.
I'm ready.
Okay, perfect.
I'm ready.
Okay, so as we three know, Brianna has a new book out, Altogether Different. It's a wonderful and emotionally devastating memoir, weaving in family history, identity, and the abolitionist uprising that led to the Civil War. You know, the huge.
Yeah, just girly things.
And it made me wonder what title we would each come up with if we were the ghostwriter for a city council member's memoir about their time working for the city. You can choose any commissioner or even the mayor. I can go first if you need some time to think. So I would choose Commissioner Mingus Mapps, and his memoir would be titled, That's Not What I Said. And I think it's accurate and provocative. And as a potential reader, it would make me want to open the book and find out what he actually said. But as the ghostwriter, I know that I will never write what he actually said.
So I'm also going with Mingus Mapps, and I guarantee that my idea is dumber than yours because I was stumped by this idea. So I went down the rabbit hole and I started looking at all the liaison responsibilities that commissioners have. You know, like we all know they have bureaus, but there's also certain things that they're like the designated liaison for. And what I didn't realize is that Commissioner Mapps is the liaison for Portland Mall management, which is like in charge of the Portland Transit Mall.
Oh,
you know,
malls,
yeah.
That kind of mall. Okay.
And so for that reason, I think that Commissioner Mapps' memoir should just be named Mall Cop.
What?
Just like no subhead, just big block letters, Mall Cop.
Oh, my God. I would read that so fast. If I had no idea even who he was or where Portland was on a map.
There's going to be no photo of him. Like,
that.
may not even have his name on it. It's just Mall Cop.
Absolutely. That's my speed. That's the
And the
island
best part is when someone opens it up and they're like, oh, that kind of mall. And that's kind of just even more disappointing. They're like, a transit mall. Now I got to Google that. Like, all right, Brianna, what would you choose?
I think that I would choose former councilwoman Joanne Hardesty. And I think that her book should just be called You're Welcome. And it could be like a double entendre, like you're welcome, fool. But also like, it's kind of like a common joke in Portland. Like, there's no black people in Portland. Oh my God, Portland's so white. It's only white people. But no, there's black people here. And guess what? You're welcome.
Yeah.
You're welcome. Come through. It's 2023.
Oh, I see. You're welcome. You are. Oh, my God. It took me a second. I'm sorry. These were excellent answers, you guys. All right. Well, on to the news of the week. Brianna, what do you have for us?
Well, today I would love to talk to you about Nigel Jaquiz's recent piece in the Willamette Week about Measure 110 and what is going on with Oregon legislature in the lead up to 2024. You know, we're going to be voting on big changes on Measure 110. So they're taking public comment. There was a presentation. This meeting was of the Joint Interim Committee on Addiction and Community Safety Response. That's an 8-person team, 12 if you count the staff. That's led by co-chairs, Senator Kate Lieber and Jason Kropf. So they're using this interim to gather all of the information that they can for a bill that's aimed at making changes to Measure 110 in next year's short session, not necessarily overturning it, but they're really trying to formulate what the changes are that need to be made to this measure. Obviously, there's really intense public concern because this measure decriminalized all these illicit drugs for personal consumption and absolutely put the cart before the horse because drugs went decrim and there was skyrocketing usage and treatments, recovery services, elusive, non-existent, overcrowded. So what makes this most recent meeting most extraordinary is two things. There's the public comment, which there was a lot of, hundreds of emails. And this presentation by Dr. Todd Corthius, who is the head of addiction medicine at OHSU. So just a few highlights from his presentation, which you can see the whole thing in Nigel Jaquiz's piece. There's a link to this presentation. And it's really good. It's a fun little slideshow, easy to read. So just a couple of highlights. Fentanyl deaths exceeded meth deaths in 2022. Fentanyl, this is something I did not know, fentanyl is 50 times more potent than heroin. What? Wow. The disproportionate burden of overdose deaths in Oregon sees Black and Indigenous males dying at more than twice the rate of white men. In a survey of people who use drugs in rural counties in Oregon and 9 other states, 42% were recently incarcerated in jail or in prison, and 85% of them reported opioid use, and only 18% received medication for opioid use disorder. Well, this was the lowlight of the presentation, is that Oregon has the fastest growing youth drug death rate in the United States. Yes. So the presentation then, it goes on to illustrate different prevention methods, education, harm reduction, medication, but it goes further, calling for access to housing, safe outdoor spaces. It's it's not a roadmap to a utopia free of hard drug overdoses, but it is, the presentation could be kind of maybe looked at as a blueprint to how to get there.
So this doctor was pro Measure 110, but he's like, hey, this is how we make it better? Or was he just Measure 110 is terrible and these are the reasons why? You know what I mean? What was his stance? I'm just curious.
Well, in my perception, it seemed neither pro nor against. It was very much, this is what we do going forward. Maybe you can draw straight lines from Measure 110 to a lot of the stuff that's happening. And that can be discussed to death. And meanwhile, nothing happens because of that. So the position was here's where we are. Here is a very clear path forward. Here are some harm reduction methods. Here are education things that here are ways that we can improve community standards to lift us out of this crisis.
Yeah. I mean, and I think this is the thing that's so hard about this moment is that Measure 110 happened. We have this crisis of rising opioid use in the region. And there are connections there, but it's not a one-to-one. And, I think that in a politicized space, there's a real tendency to be well, we need to throw the whole thing away and go back to criminalizing everything, which was never what Measure 110 was supposed to do anyways. It wasn't supposed to end addiction. It was supposed to end the criminalization of people that were going through it. So, yeah. Yeah.
People that use drugs are going to use drugs. People are always going to use drugs. As long as we're living in a capitalist hellscape and et cetera, people are looking for an escape for this. That's not going to change.
And also, if we don't provide mental health services, because I feel that a lot of people self-medicate, When I read through the article, it made me feel bad because this whole time I've been like, yeah, I know we have a fentanyl crisis, but if we put it up against the national statistics, like Portland, Oregon as a whole, doesn't look too bad. We're just like another state surviving in this fentanyl crisis. But I didn't know, of course, about the rising death of kids due to overdoses. And that really, I was like, oh no, that's not good.
Yeah. And the diagrams associated with that particular stat, it was the majority of those cases were like, they're experimentation cases. These kids are not addicted to fentanyl. They're trying something for the first time, and everything is laced with fentanyl anymore.
Yeah.
It's so messed up. Yeah. Wow. Gone are the days of buying a pill from someone in an alley.
Oh my! I would.
Do you remember our youth, John? Y'all
buy it or sell it?
No comment. Yeah, mom.
Oh, I forgot. John's mom does listen to this. Do you remember my youth, John? Sorry, not a laughing matter. Are there going to be more of these hearings? Just regular citizens coming up and talking about, pro, against, or like what needs to happen? I'm just curious if it's going to be like a Parks and Rec thing, the TV show. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I think that this last meeting on Monday, the meeting that this article came out of, I think that was kind of the Parks and Rec situation, because they're not going to meet again until February. And honestly, February is going to be here like that. And it very well might be that kind of back and forth. But the public comment just for this meeting was, there were a lot. I mean, it's hundreds of messages.
I want to back that up. Statesman Journal says public will be able to comment in another not yet scheduled committee meeting.
Gotcha.
So there is going to be another committee meeting. It just hasn't been scheduled yet.
Perfect. I was just curious. And also, what was the general public saying?
I could jump in on that. I went down the rabbit hole, actually, of reading all the public comments, and
you read them all?
Well, I didn't know. I didn't read all of them, but I read. There were literally hundreds of them.
John, you have a full-time job. What is happening?
But I did spend a while picking through them, and it was interesting. They really were all over the gamut. There were some people that had serious personal interactions that were really negative based on situations with people who are addicted. There was this woman who had this really harrowing story of accidentally getting pricked with a needle, things like that happen. There's also a lot of people that are clearly just sort of not happy with what addiction has done for their lifestyle, Several times a week I walk to the gym in downtown Portland and I pass people who are passed out on the sidewalks. It's I don't know that is the most valuable perspective on a very complex, multifaceted epidemic of addiction. There was another person who claimed that this has killed tourism, conventions, and small businesses, which okay. I think there's something else that's happened in the last 3 years that has had a much bigger impact on tourism, conventions, and small businesses in the city. But there also were some comments that were really thoughtful. Some people really talking about just sort of the bigger picture of evidence-based harm use reduction. There were some statements by former law enforcement officers that had a very level-headed, not just we need to criminalize or decriminalize, but here's what, from my experience, is actually going to work in a very measured way. So I don't know. Right. There's a lot of good ideas in there if anybody has endless time
to read them all.
Apparently, to read through public comment periods.
Listeners, I just want you to know that John has also had the most intense work week. So this is kind of insane that he did extra credit homework for not his story.
I was just on fire last night.
Oh my God. This boy is on fire. So good, John. I love it. Oh my God. Well, thank you, John and Brianna, for this presentation. Awesome. Well, John, what is your story?
Yeah, I want to talk about, I think this can go in the category of good news. Governor Tina Kotek just signed an executive order that is going to forgive unpaid traffic fees and court fines for about 10,000 people. So 10,000 people who had their driver's license suspended, not because of, traffic violation or anything. It's just like they had a fine and they didn't pay it. And, it's sort of like is doubled back on something that's been going on for years in Oregon. The legislature passed a bill back in 2020, which basically prohibited these types of license suspensions. And then Governor Brown had forgiven about 8,000 people in the same situation last year. This is something that I don't quite get, but in Kotek's statement, she said that the names in Governor Brown's order didn't actually include all of the people who were eligible for this. Somehow they found another 10,000 people on top of the 8,000 people that had already been put on this list. Question marks there. I don't know how that works. But, at the end of the day, yes, all these people who had their license suspended just because they couldn't afford to pay the fines are going to be able to drive again, which I think is
that's awesome.
A good thing.
That's a Christmas miracle for those stuck in that poverty loop.
Yeah.
Yeah. Especially because so many people need their car to get to work.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just, okay, I'm sorry. I'm just going to, so here's what's wrong with U.S. capitalism. It punishes the poor. I know people know this, but it's been proven time and time again that the poorest of us are the poorest because of systemic racism. And that also adversely, it affects white people. And I feel like white people don't get that because these are colorblind barriers that were set so quote unquote, poor people couldn't rise up. And for the creators of the system, that meant slaves and people of color. But guess what? In late stage capitalism, that's all of us. That's it. If you're broke, you're broke. And now the shit that was supposed to easily put a black person in jail or make life difficult for them is now creeping up on everyone else. And I'm sorry, I'm just going to hit this is America. Don't catch you slipping on. But it's true. I'm off my soapbox. Go on.
Would you like some really gnarly statistics to prop up your soapbox, Claudia?
Oh, I do.
So this whole concept is called debt-based license suspensions. And I found this report from the ACLU in 2021, sort of looking into it. Here's some numbers to make your hair go on fire. They estimate that there's 11 million people who are not allowed to drive in America because they can't afford to pay these fines and fees. The original amounts of those fines range from $30 to $800. After all the additional late fees and everything, these people owe an average of $200 to $9,000. From $300 to $800 up to $9,000. And they said they did a bunch of interviews to talk to people who'd been through this. And they said every single person that they interviewed found that the penalty of having their driver's license suspended made it more difficult for them to comply because it created obstacles to them getting to work or yeah.
That's the loop. That's the loop. Yeah. I love to see both sides of the coin. Here's the oh no, if all debt forgiveness for parking tickets, for violations, all that stuff. Oh, John? Yes.
No,
yes,
finish your
John.
point. I've got stuff to say about parking tickets. But
okay. Well, if that were to go by the wayside, then children like me growing up would then have to be told a different lie as to why their uncle was in jail. Because it was always parking tickets.
Is that your other side of a coin?
Yeah, that was my other side.
On the other hand,
you're gonna have to start being real with children.
That was such an unexpected twist.
Sorry. Okay, go on. Yes, John.
Well, I wanted to point out, shout out to OPB, who did a lot of the reporting that I'm sort of basing this on, and also shout out to OPB for this correction. They said that their story had been updated to reflect that unpaid parking tickets are not traffic fees and not included in the governor's order. And I was like, wait, what does that mean? So turns out you can't lose your license over parking tickets. You can have your wages garnished. You can have your car booted, but
you can go to jail. That's what I heard.
No, not for parking tickets. For moving violations, but not for parking tickets. So if you're sitting on a pile of parking tickets, bad things will happen to you, but they're not going to take your license.
I wish
that's
they
my
had
public
Google.
Service announcement of the day.
Yeah. Thank you, John. I wish I had Google in the early 90s.
Yeah, they're just going to boot your car.
Yeah. Do you understand? Like, I pay my parking tickets like that because I just thought they would throw your ass in jail. Like,
that's what they want you to think.
I know. It's like my mom made the most compliant person ever.
I never lost my license, but I did lose 2 different cars to parking tickets. Just excessive parking tickets. One of them got towed, one of them got booted, and then got towed eventually. Yeah. Because I couldn't do anything once it was booted. What am I going to do? I don't have all this money. Anyway, I was very much stuck in that loop. So, beautiful thing that the governor did. Thank you.
Yeah.
But also fucking the parking ticket thing, like abolish parking, abolish cars, abolish roads. The city is so perfectly situated to work without cars. Why are we fucking with ourselves like this?
The one thing I will say, if you think you might be in this situation, there are resources online that you can check out and you can figure out if you are eligible for this amnesty. So we'll have that link in the show notes.
Yeah. The Oregon Department of Motor Vehicles has that web page, right? Explaining how to apply for debt forgiveness. Is that
It's very cute. It's DMV2U with a 2.
Oh, it's really cute. Oh, like 2. All right, well, let's take a quick break here, and when we come back, more news of the week. Okay, so my headline this week comes from Maxine Bernstein of The Oregonian. She's following this federal civil rights lawsuit filed by 26 Black descendants of families whose homes were torn down by the city way back in the 60s and the 70s to make way for the legacy Emanuel Hospital. And this not only destroyed a historically Black neighborhood in the Albina district, it robbed a lot of Black Portlanders of generational wealth and financial stability. And for months, attorneys for, legacy Emanuel and the city urged the judge to just throw out the suit. They were just like, yo, so long ago. And look at us. How can we be racist? We have land acknowledgements on all of our city websites. What? Me racist? That was it. And honestly, it didn't look like the defendants were going to get anywhere because, usually that doesn't happen. But late last week, a U.S. district judge wrote a 27-page opinion ruling that each of the descendants' claims can move forward. And this was huge because this judge is a 67-year-old, white man. Sorry. That was this whole shit seems like it was racially motivated. This is his quote: "Everything down to the language used in justifying the raising of this neighborhood." And once again, I summoned the surprise Pikachu face for the city of Portland. I feel like every other week, they're always like, what? They were not thinking this was going to be a thing because they argued that the families suing are not even the homeowners who were directly impacted. And the suit was filed far beyond the 2-year or 6-year statute of limitations. And, but a federal judge finally called foul on everything that happened. Thoughts?
Ugh, freaking finally. I mean, gosh.
Yeah. Shout out U.S. District Judge Michael H. Simon, because, judges can cut things all sorts of ways. I think that he could have very much just written a procedural sort of this case has standing. But he went that extra step, and he did say very explicitly in his judgment, no, this has real worth on the merits that this can be read as racially coded language. And I think that judges don't do that all the time, He doesn't have to do that. And I think it is a really good step to that, these sorts of things are being said out in public in legal settings and being used as standing for lawsuits. I think it's the right thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to quickly say, because, exactly what you said, John, but he actually pointed out some of this racially coded language, and it was just so apparent.
Can I give you one phrase? Undesirable encroachments. It's just
Yeah, okay, so he basically noted, this judge, that Emanuel commissioned a report that justified the taking of surrounding properties, because here's the thing, they didn't just take the land that the hospital was going to be built on. They took everything around it because they didn't even want any Black people around them. And they were just so we're justified in taking this because the surrounding properties to protect itself against undesirable encroachments. But here's the deal. If you were to drive right now to North Russell Street and Williams Avenue, you're going to see a vacant plot of land.
Yep.
Meaning they just wanted that neighborhood gone. And you can go to that intersection, see that waste of land today. Like, they did nothing. So, and that was also brought in. Like, the judge was like, this is like, what are you guys doing? So, I don't know, like, the suit alleges that the hospital conspired with the city, and what was then the PDC, or the Portland Development Commission, is now called Prosper Portland. Nice little brand change, to destroy this Black community and displace hundreds of families from their homes under the guise of, quote unquote, urban renewal. And I have a friend who grew up in the days of Vanport, like old school Portlander. And I don't know if you don't know what Vanport is, that's another lawsuit waiting to happen. And also, fun fact, he was also a member of the 1972 Jefferson High School basketball team in Portland, which was the first all-Black team to win Oregon State Championship.
Nice.
Anyhow, he would always refer to urban renewal as Negro removal. And I was just like, yeah.
Ouch.
Like, yeah.
Yeah. Not hyperbole.
No. And here's the deal is that Black Portlanders have been saying this for years. Like, this was planned. This is not like a conspiracy. It's calculated how they were going to erase this community. And I'm just ready for other Portland racist conspiracy theories to be proven true. Like, let's go. Let's open it up.
Yeah.
Let's do this.
Do you guys think that this will set that type of precedent that's going to like open the floodgates to these kind of lawsuits? Is that the hope? I hope.
Well, I mean, in the article, it said that the judge cited the 2003 lawsuit stemming from the 1921 Tulsa race riot, right? So there was a lawsuit in 2003 that he's citing as precedent. Like, I can only imagine that these things continue to grow as like cases of precedent for future lawsuits. Yeah, it was, 82 years. Between the lawsuit
and that's still that went through, but like 100 and 300 people were killed. But I also love that number. They're like, I don't know, between 1 and 300. I'm like, that's a big jump, though.
That's a big jump.
That's a lot of people.
That's a big jump.
Well, Claudia, one of the things that I thought was really interesting is that Maxine Bernstein wrote in her article that this is sort of building on new research that has been done in recent years about like what actually went down. And it cited this report from Portland State University grad students in 2021 called Reclamation Towards the Futurity of Central Albina, which like really looks at this in depth. And like a couple of things it cites. If the displaced residents owned their homes in Central Albina today, they would likely control over $100 million in residential property wealth. And it draws a difference between what they call curable versus incurable losses, right? Like you can give somebody money, but like it talks about all these incurable losses, like the loss of collective strength resulting from the fragmentation of the community, the loss of cultural and social identity, and says that like these are things that we should be considering in these types of situations as well.
And this is real. These are real things. It's not just like, hugs and kisses for a human. Like this is like what creates a healthy person. Like whenever you hear about like depression or mental health or whatever, they're always just like, find a community, find support.
A healthy person, a healthy neighborhood, a healthy city.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, man. John. Oh, John. Dang. He did his work. He went out and read stuff. Well, now I guess we're just in that pattern of waiting for what comes next. Yeah. And I hope that it gets resolved quickly. I hope that like the city of Portland and Emanuel don't just keep throwing stuff in. You know what I mean? Because that could very easily be what happens next. It's just a bunch of wrenches until they're forced to pay something. Well, that's all I got. I mean, I don't know.
Hey, Claudia, nice roundup.
Thank you.
Nice roundup, Claudia.
Great job. Great job, everybody.
Oh, my God. Thank you, John. I appreciate that.
Welcome.
As always, it's a pleasure to host you two. Two of the brightest and best journalists in town.
And John.
I said two!
Thanks, Claudia.
Thank you, Claudia. Thank you.
That's all for today here on CityCast Portland. Thanks so much for listening. Our executive producer is John Notarianni. Our producers this week were Julia Fiaioni, Lizzie Goldsmith, Noah Snyderman, and Natalie Rivera. Special shout out to Natalie Rivera for not only coming in clutch this week, but also last week. Our newsletter editors were Rachel Monahan, John Notarianni, Brian Vance, and Adrian Gonzalez. And our host is me, Claudia Meza. Original music by Jenny Conley and Stephen Drizos. Additional music by Epidemic Sound and All the Kimonos. We'll be back Monday morning with more from around the city. Until then, see you at Slim's.